This may come as a shock to some of you, but I'm a nerd. So many fictional universes have captured my imagination to no end, but none have fixated me for longer periods of my life than Star Wars. Everything about this franchise, the artistry, the world building, the life lessons, has shaped me as a dreamer. But more than anything, Star Wars has an abundantly diverse roster of characters. A roster that, at its best, has given me stories that have changed my life. In this video, I'm listing off the 10 characters that didn't just make me love Star Wars, but they're the characters that made me the person I am today. I'm mostly focusing on Disney canon here, as that's the timeline I'm most familiar with, but there are a couple of stories outside of that continuity that have impacted me too much to ignore. And if portrayals contradict what characters mean to me, I'll be focusing more on the stories that better represent the characters' values. Furthermore, because I want to get really in-depth here, there's going to be spoilers. So if there are any major pieces of Star Wars media you're yet to see, I just thought I'd warn you in advance. Now with all that out of the way, let's dive right in. Punch it, Chewie.
No, we are the spark that'll light the fire that'll burn the First Order down.
Because it meant I was going to see Han Solo and Luke Skywalker again, my 7-year-old self was absolutely stoked for The Force Awakens. Though seeing these classic characters from my parents' generation excited me to no end, this movie made its freshest impact on me with the introduction of new heroes. And the character that inspired me the most over the 4 years that followed was none other than Black Leader himself, Poe Dameron. Through Poe's sociability and individuality, it was as if Oscar Isaac painted the picture of the guy I wanted to become. It's honestly eerie how much of my personality I feel like I owe to his loudmouth confidence in the face of Kylo Ren or his no-nonsense mutiny against Admiral Holdo. One of my favorite things about Poe is how unapologetically enthusiastic he is about the Resistance cause, and the way that elevates into an unashamed love for everyone that shares his struggle. We see this in the way he loves BB-8 like he's his dog, in the older brother type role he fills for Kazuda Xiono, and in the familial dynamic he holds with the rest of Black Squadron. And he uses this love, this enthusiasm, to recruit more people to his Resistance cause. Take, for instance, the scene in The Force Awakens where he and Finn escape from the Finalizer. How much they instantly hit it off, the way he's the first person Finn's ever met that's treated him like an individual, and the amount of fun they're having despite the fact their lives are in danger. It's inspiring how Poe can even turn a dogfight into a wholesome moment. I really love his bond with Finn because I feel like I've been there. I know how awesome it feels to have a homie who supports you the same way you support them, and it was Poe who showed me how strong friendship can make you. What really got Poe on this list for me though is his unwavering confidence in following his gut to do what's right. This spirit of rebellion that drives so many of the best Star Wars stories, with defiance of the odds, the systems, and expectations, runs through Poe's veins so much that he embodies it. In The Last Jedi, no matter what everyone on his side tells him to do, he follows his gut and what he believes is right. Often, that instinct gets him in trouble, but it's always driven by his compassion. He follows his ideals all the way to the end, but learns to be open to the input of others. While the sequel trilogy was coming out, I was at like a really strict Catholic school with rigid expectations. So seeing Poe, a guy who marched to the beat of his own drum and made people smile doing it, inspired me to do the same. The sequel trilogy isn't perfect. That's a reality I accept. But even amid the flaws of these movies, the actors and characters truly find moments to shine. For 4 years of my childhood, Poe showed me that rebellion wasn't sticking it to the man for the sake of sticking it to the man. It was finding the courage to be you. And that's something I've never forgotten, even in my senior year of high school.
Revenge is not the Jedi way.
I am no Jedi.
If you won't be able to tell by the large quantity of Clone Wars and Rebels-related characters on this list, the Star Wars franchise is at its best for me when animated. Considering Ahsoka Tano is the most iconic character from that corner of the universe, it wouldn't feel right not having her on this list. The Star Wars universe is socially defined by factions. Titles like Jedi, Sith, Scoundrel, Rebel each come with their own set of expectations. But just like in the real world, labels in Star Wars can flatten individuality. And when their values transform, factions can leave people behind. No character illustrates that better than Ahsoka Tano. Growing up, she was never my favorite character. But when I started to develop more awareness of my identity and the expectations around me, her story really started to click. Rewatching the Wrong Jedi arc in my freshman year made me realize that the feelings Ahsoka processes there are the same feelings everyone has to navigate when they come of age. How do you maintain trust in systems that don't trust you? How do you find your place in a world that's always changing? And how do you distinguish the person you truly are from the person they tell you to be? Ahsoka answers all these questions with the pivotal decision of being herself and choosing to make her own destiny by following her own path. In the way she still practices all the compassion she learned from the Jedi Order really shows the impact individual action can have. Everything about this character, from the authentic personality and Ashley Eckstein's voice acting, to the way her fluid lightsaber movement embraces the animated medium to its fullest, or even just how outright devastated the visual storytelling around her can make me feel at her darkest moments, just shows how high the highs of Star Wars can be. Not to mention the fact that she's the light side user in the 2 outright best duels in the entire franchise. Really, animated Star Wars is awesome, and so is Ahsoka.
You failed, Your Highness. I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
Up to this point, I've only really talked about characters that made me love Star Wars more once I was already into it. But the character that first hooked me into this world is unironically the one who was partially designed to do just that. Of course, I'm talking about my childhood hero in my 4th Halloween costume, Luke Skywalker. In each movie of the original trilogy, we see Luke undergo a different emotional evolution, but they all fit together seamlessly and teach this message that I think any human can relate to. Out of every character George Lucas created, Luke is the one most like him. The emotions young George had in wanting to leave rural California to become a filmmaker aren't unlike a Tatooine farm boy's fantasy of flying among the stars. And it's the dream I have to get out of my home state to do something creative with my life that makes A New Hope so relatable to me. That binary sunset moment that George has revealed as his favorite moment in all of Star Wars, where Luke stares at the horizon and considers all the possible paths ahead of him, is something I respond to deeper the further I get into my senior year. Watching The Empire Strikes Back, my heart sinks every time Luke loses this uphill battle against fear, impatience, and distraction. Luke fails here in a way that's tragic, believable, and timelessly human, but he combines this failure with the shocking revelation that Darth Vader's his father and uses it as a catalyst for growth. In the version of Luke we see in Return of the Jedi is a hero I'm really grateful I had to look up to when I was younger. The unwavering belief that there's good in everyone, no matter what their actions express, is an empathetic truth that the world's kind of forgotten. Seeing how nobly Mark Hamill portrays Luke's confident reshaping of galactic history always makes me feel endlessly hopeful. Luke's message that people are still capable of pure kindness despite harsh environments is even more relevant today than it was 40 years ago, so this list wouldn't be complete without him.
Your feelings for her are not real. They are real to me!
At the start of the video, you might remember how I mentioned that there was one character so strong that I had to break my no legends rule. That character was none other than Starkiller, played impeccably by Sam Witwer in the Force Unleashed duology. His growth, related to connection, control, and independence, absolutely changed me to no end. What his story shows is that no matter how broken the world makes us, love can inspire us to rise above our conditions. Starkiller had the toughest upbringing of every character on this list. He was taken away from loving Jedi parents he had to watch die, only to neglectfully have his humanity stripped from him by a Sith Lord who saw him as nothing more than a weapon. But it's when he meets Juno Eclipse, the first person who values him for more than his power, he develops the autonomy to choose his own destiny. This love gives him so much strength that he's able to fight through an entire galaxy for it and take down Darth Vader twice. This story gives me hope that, even for psychos like me, romantic connection is possible. Most Force users either live entirely in light or darkness, or fall to darkness after being raised in light. Starkiller serves as an interesting exception, as he starts out in darkness, welcomes light, but interprets the Force in his own way. When we first meet him, he's been raised by Darth Vader's neglectful teaching and taught to be nothing more than a weapon. Even after he strikes out on his own, it's his instinct to draw his strength from hatred and resort to violence first. It's not to say he eradicates these instincts once he starts learning Jedi philosophy from Ram Koda, but he learns to manage them. I relate to this because I've struggled with anger issues my whole life. And the reason it took me so long to conquer it was because I thought it was something that I needed to destroy, when in reality, it was something I had to learn how to control. I can't get rid of my intense emotions the same way Starkiller can't get rid of his dark side impulses, but what I can do is learn not to give in to them. Much like how Starkiller unlocks his utmost potential when using both light and darkness to beat Vader, I've found spiritual balance in using both logic and emotion to play drums. To me, what Starkiller represents is the cosmic bliss found free of institutions and authority. He doesn't use the Force as a Jedi, nor does he use it as a Sith. He simply uses it. His attachment doesn't give him fear, nor does it cause him weakness. He lets it drive him and give him strength. Spiritually and socially, he forms his own path, and that's what's really inspired me through all of high school. This is Sam Witwer's first appearance on this list, and if you know who else he's played in Star Wars, then you can probably guess that it won't be his last.
You were right. I was a coward. But now I know there's something stronger than fear. Far stronger. The Force.
I've already made a whole video about how much I look up to Kanan Jarrus, so there isn't a lot I can say in this segment that I haven't said already. The whole thesis of that video was this belief of mine that Kanan is the best example of what a Jedi can be, as he both honored the ideas that reside at the core of the Jedi's identity, while also challenging norms of what the Order practiced. He rose to knighthood without a master, he carefully mentored his apprentice to keep him from falling to the dark side, and was able to develop social connection without possessive connotation. But to flatten this segment down to just Kanan was the ideal Jedi would be a great disservice to Kanan, as he's both a character I look up to and relate to, regardless of his attunement to the Force. A common theme through the journey of Star Wars characters is the struggle with fear, as every Jedi tries to get the best of their fear before their fear gets the best of them. Kanan, however, shows that developing courage isn't as straightforward as destroying fear, it's finding something to label as more important than fear. With his assertion of responsibility and using his Jedi powers to fight the Empire, his acceptance to the fact that all he can do to prevent Ezra from falling is the best he can, and his embracement of death in order to save his family, Kanan defeats fear time and time again. But that ability of his to spiritually let go of earthly shackles isn't the only reason I look up to him. There's this one quote of his that always stands out to me, and it's what he tells Bendu right before the Battle of Atollon, in hopes to rally him against the Empire. When Bendu tells Kanan he wishes not to interfere, Kanan says,
I tried to live that way once, told myself the galaxy would go on with or without me. But when I saw innocents harmed and knew I had the power to do something about it, I couldn't just watch it all burn down around me.
The reason I love this so much is, for a while there, I was Bendu. I'd hear about horrible things happening in my country and just decide to ignore it, living my life arrogantly under the impression that it didn't affect me. But lately, with everything that's been happening, I'm realizing I can't afford to be a bystander, and Kanan would want me to use my power of free speech the same way he used his power of the Force. With a lot of the media that my generation was brought up on, Kanan fills this void of morally well-rounded and earnestly imperfect male role models. Ever since elementary school, when I felt directionless, I've just asked myself, what would Kanan do? And found resolve. It really shows how many outstanding characters the Star Wars universe is populated with if Kanan means this much to me and isn't even in my top 5.
Tell your sister you were right.
When making this list, I was torn as to whether I should count Anakin Skywalker and Darth Vader as one or two characters. But the more I thought about it, I realized they were two sides of the same coin. Even after his fall, Anakin is still the chosen one. And it's his arc of dark descent leading to mythic redemption that creates an emotional through line through the 6 Lucas movies. This story is one of how men process pain and the emotional cages they can build for themselves when they feel unheard. The dark side is Anakin's external coping mechanism, an unhealthy practice he turns to instead of seeking guidance. In Revenge of the Sith, fear is eating Anakin alive. But because of the system he's a part of, and the stigma that system puts around these emotions, he doesn't feel like he can ask for help, so he turns to the dark side, clinging onto these feelings of power and hatred. But in doing so, he loses his humanity and permanently severs all his relationships. At its darkest, Anakin's story is one of tragedy. It's one of a young slave, an innocent kid who wants to make the galaxy safe. It's one of a fearless general, one who cares about everyone he fights alongside, but starts to realize the institutions he supports don't value those people the same way he does. And it's one of a conflicted husband, who, out of the terrified intention of saving his family, tears it apart while becoming the fist of a bureaucratic tyrant. But at its brightest, Anakin's story is one of hope. It's one of a heartless killing machine who doubts his fate when he's encountered by old friends. It's one of an absent father who starts to feel again when he learns that his son's still alive after all these years. And it's one of a fallen hero who, despite all the mistakes he's made, comes back in touch with who he once was and fulfills his destiny. Much like the feelings of worthlessness that can be felt under moments of intense collapse, Anakin believes that he's too far down this dark path and can't be saved. But he learns through seeing his younger self in Luke that it's not too late for him to repent. That decision he makes at the end of Return of the Jedi to bring balance to the Force by saving a single life only inspires me more the older I get. In moments where I felt lost and hopeless, welcoming in the light the same way Anakin did has made me feel super triumphant. Vader hooked me as a kid because of his intimidating demeanor, badass moments, and haunting aesthetic. But Anakin stayed with me because his story taught me something about self-forgiveness and, well, growing up.
Stand up together. Because that's when we're strongest. As one.
I loved Star Wars for a few years before getting into Rebels and Clone Wars, but Ezra was really the character that solidified the franchise for me. Before, it was something I enjoyed and connected with my dad over, but the moment I found Rebels was the moment Star Wars became more than something I watched. It became part of my identity. Ezra was the character who left the biggest impact on me. I loved how connected he was to animals, always using his force powers to make new magical friends. I loved how effortlessly Taylor Gray delivered his humor, making him cool and cocky, but awkward and clumsy at the same time. Seeing this kid, not that much older than I was, go on these crazy adventures every week really inspired me when I'd feel angry or alone through elementary and middle school. And the reason for that connection is simple. Ezra was the character whose eyes I saw the Star Wars galaxy through. When we meet Ezra, he's not your traditional mythic hero. He's street smart and has the D&D rogue skill set, but he's just a kid. Everything he experiences beyond the streets of Lothal City, the wonders of the Force, the terrors of the Empire, the endless stories of the galaxy, he responds to the same way any teen from Earth would. And viewing this franchise through that lens has given it a whole new level of immersion for me. Over the years, I've interpreted Ezra's arc in many different ways. I first read it as a rejection of negative energy. I then saw it as an astronomical development of selflessness. But over time, I realized Ezra's story is one about the power of platonic familial love. Because every major change in him, his rejection of hatred, development of confidence, and growth from selfishness to selflessness, comes from that connection. The main thing that Ezra tells you is to open your heart to others and listen to what their hearts are trying to tell you. We see it in the brother-like bond he builds with Zeb, in Hera, who teaches him to fight for the people who can't fight for themselves, in Kanan, who shows him how to move forward without running from his past, and in Sabine, who helps him realize he doesn't need to pretend to be someone else to belong. I've always felt angsty and introverted, so I've always had a hard time connecting with other people. But Ezra showed me I wasn't a monster. I just needed to find my ghost crew. And now that I found that ghost crew, there's no empire I wouldn't stand up against. Growing up, he was always my favorite character in the franchise. And even though there are 3 characters I relate to more today, Ezra will always hold a special place in my heart.
I love you.
I know.
Though Luke was the original trilogy character I first connected with, Han Solo was the guy that I really wanted to be. I wanted to be as sharp-tongued, talented, and charismatic as the smuggler-turned-war hero that Harrison Ford effortlessly brought to life. That's why 7-year-old me absolutely hulked out when he got stabbed through the heart in the most devastating scene in the franchise. Though I have my criticisms of how Disney's handled some of George's other characters, I think Han is someone they've consistently gotten right through the continued presence of Lawrence Kasdan. Han's arc, from Solo to the original trilogy to Force Awakens, crafts a compelling through line about the expansion and repression one can undergo with their worldview. It's easy to simplify Han's growth into him realizing the galaxy is bigger than he is, but it's more so this revelation that the galaxy is worth fighting for. When we meet Han in Solo, he's a rugged survivor who gets by on his own, but he still has faith in others. He has faith that Kira will wait for him the same way he'll fight for her, and that keeps him going. But during the 3rd act of the movie, many of the people Han trusts betray him one way or another, so it's easy to see how that experience would turn him into the guarded loner we meet in the Mos Eisley Cantina. In A New Hope, Han only agrees to help Luke and Obi-Wan off of the promise of money, but his heart manages to be reached by the plight of the rebels, so he turns around to cover Luke as he blows up the Death Star. However, it's in Empire that we really see him transform from scoundrel to hero. Before the Battle of Hoth, he's ready to leave the rebellion, but after getting thrown into this sweeping galactic odyssey where he falls in love with Leia and suffers from the Empire's tyranny firsthand, something changes in Han. Leia rebuilds this belief in him that people can be honest and that sincerity is worth fighting for, and that inspires him to look death straight in the eye in order to give his friends a chance at escape. He takes this refound faith with him for the rest of his life, right until his final moment. He knows how far Ben's fallen to the dark side, but he still tries to reason with him. His heart is literally impaled by a blade of betrayal and hatred, but it still feels hopeful as it commands him to reach out to the face of his son, believing that there's still good behind it. Han has every reason to view the galaxy with cynicism, but he decides to keep himself open. He's betrayed by people he trusts time and time again, but still thinks they can find redemption and always gives them second chances. He's seen enough of the cosmic energy field to know the galaxy runs on something bigger than what's in front of him, but he still believes that people choose who they become, because he always refuses to be told the odds.
You cannot imagine the depths I would go to stay alive, fueled by my singular hatred for you.
I love the expansive world building of Star Wars because it suggests this idea that characters with only mere seconds of screen time can have entire lifetimes of stories behind them. No character better showcases this magic than Darth Maul. In Phantom Menace, he's one note. He's superficially cool for his badass design and double-bladed lightsaber, but he's more of an obstacle for the heroes to overcome than a villain with fleshed out motives. However, 13 years after this movie came out, Filoni and Whitwer were able to look at his 7 minutes of screen time and ask, how does this character, who's been taught to do nothing but kill, respond to a galaxy that's left him behind? And in doing so, they crafted one of the most existential, mature, and sprawling tragedies in all of nerd fiction. Every other character on this list experienced trauma at some point in their life and had to learn not to be defined by it. Maul serves as a unique outlier. Where other stories are ones of inspiration, Maul's is a cautionary tale. His life is ruled by darkness. He was raised by it, broken by it, and clings onto it to snap back from his failures. But his choice to never embrace light has a story go out on a whimper. His downward arc is about the dangers of obsession and the incompletion found in defining yourself off of a single wound. Poetically, his one distinct line in Phantom Menace goes on to define his drive through all of the Clone Wars, Solo, and Rebels.
At last we will have revenge.
Everything he does, whether that be the development of the Shadow Collective, his conquest of Mandalore, or his quest for Sith knowledge, he doesn't do to further his influence, he does to get back at Obi-Wan. In the grand scheme of things, Maul causes Obi-Wan more personal loss than Obi-Wan ever causes him. His mentor and the only woman he ever loved respectively both die in his arms because of Maul. But because Obi-Wan fills his life with connection, responsibility, and spiritual tranquility, he rises above this rivalry and impacts the galaxy in a positive way. Maul, who only dwells in negativity and feels nothing but hatred, dies quietly in the desert, leaving very little behind to show he was even here. Maul is devastated as a victim of the system, but he never leaves that prison by his choice alone. He rides this obsession with revenge all the way to his last breath. When he learns Obi-Wan's on Tatooine to protect the Chosen One, he doesn't see Luke's destiny as balance being brought to the Force. He gets behind it because the fulfillment of the prophecy would be a massive middle finger to his former master Darth Sidious. His story shows that obsession with vengeance doesn't make you stronger. It drains you until there's nothing left. And that's the tragedy. It's a lesson that Maul never learns himself. There have been stretches of my life where I've been Maul. There have been people I've held grudges against the same way Maul did with Palpatine and Obi-Wan. And I started using that hatred as fuel for my fire. But reflecting on his arc last year, I saw that foundations built on negativity are flimsy, and letting go makes you stronger than clinging on. In showing me how not to process betrayal, Maul has shown me how I can move forward. I can confidently state that his story has made me a better person, and yet, he isn't even number one.
The Empire wanted to destroy worlds, and they did. They destroyed mine.
Though Ezra Bridger was the Rebels character I related to most initially, the more time has passed, the more I've realized that I'm Sabine Wren. With her love of art, introverted tendencies, and impulsive frustration, I see myself in her more than any other Star Wars character. But relating to the themes prevalent through this entire video, it's her story about self-expression, social nonconformity, and acceptance of responsibility that's helped me improve. Through the first 2 seasons of Rebels, Sabine rarely opens up to the audience and verbally explains who she is, often avoiding talking about her past and feelings the same way the other characters do. But through the way she's airbrushed her personality onto everything she touches, the audience can see how bright her spark truly burns. It's in this character that Filoni really conveys his appreciation for art. Sabine hates the Empire to her core, but she's not going to fight against it uncreatively. Every TIE fighter she blows up and every piece of propaganda she vandalizes, she makes an eruption of color, visually violating the colorless tone of Imperial influence. This idea that art can be more than something you see or hear, it can be something you feel, has really changed the way I've approached creativity. And it's a revelation I don't know if I would have fully grasped without Sabine's influence. During the Ezra segment, I mentioned how Sabine was the one who helped Ezra realize he didn't have to pretend to be someone else to get people to like him. And the reason I bring that back up is because she did that for me too. Among both Rebels and Mandalorians, she's never afraid to stand out, to change her hair color every season, make her armor as expressive as she wants, and vocalize her frustration when she disagrees with the status quo. She stands apart from the masses, but still connects with them. She's able to rally the rest of Clan Ren stand against the Empire. She's able to recruit more defective cadets to the rebel cause and find belonging with the specters on board the Ghost. She showed me that I could still be an individual while being a part of something bigger, which is a lesson I take with me every day. I think the way she inspires me the most is her development of not only confronting and accepting her past demons, but taking responsibility over them. Through the entire series, she's running from her failures on Mandalore, of designing this powerful weapon that the Empire uses on her own people. She bottles that guilt up until her acquisition of the Darksaber forces her to come back in touch with her roots. Kanan, Ezra, and Fen Rao help her realize that her mistakes in the past don't define her future, but it's Ursa and Tristan who help her realize she has the power to make things right. Trauma and self-forgiveness is a powerful recurring theme through Star Wars, and Sabine's arc is the most realistic grasp on it. Mistakes can't be undone or forgotten, but they can't define you, nor can they stop you from improving. By the end of Rebels, Sabine has reached a new place in the universe. One that isn't perfect, but it's one where she's finally at peace. She doesn't erase her guilt, but she moves forward while still carrying it. She hasn't found complete social acceptance, but she knows she isn't alone anymore. She hasn't overthrown all evil in the galaxy, but she knows battles against it can be won. She doesn't have to simply be resolved, connected, or victorious to feel optimistic. She simply just has to be. Sitting at the junction between high school and college, I'm at a point in my life that feels just as much like an ending as it does a beginning. And right now, Sabine's message to remember your faults, embrace your family, and never stop being yourself means more to me now than it ever has before. And that's why she comes in at number 1. In conclusion, Star Wars changed my life. Not through lightsabers, not through Wikipedia articles, but through people. Fictional people who helped me grow as a real one. Poe taught me to trust my instincts in tense environments. Ahsoka taught me to make my own path in a world full of labels. Luke taught me to dream big. Starkiller taught me how to turn my weakness into a strength. Kanan taught me confronting your fears is the only way to best them. Anakin taught me not to repress pain and forgive myself for my failures. Ezra taught me that connection with others gives life meaning. Han taught me that the world is full of wonder and worth fighting for. Maul taught me not to cling on to my lowest moments. And Sabine taught me that before longing for acceptance from others, I have to accept myself. Star Wars has given me so much to connect with, and I'm immensely grateful these stories have been there for me for all these years. Right now, I've got a lot of things going through my head, and I've got some big steps ahead, but I know that no matter what happens as I face what life has in store for me, I'll never forget what I've learned. These lessons of acceptance, confidence, and connection I was taught by my friends from a galaxy far, far away. Writing this script, I realized the beauty of this franchise is no two people can have an identical top 10, as there are so many different lessons to be learned by this insane variety of characters. That's why I now pass the lightsaber to you. Which Star Wars characters left the biggest impact on your life? Not just the person you are, but the person you see yourself becoming. This power to see fiction as more than just stories is strong in my family, and you have that power too, which is why I'm encouraging you to put your list in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, the Force will be with you, always.